Hey, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of Wholesome House Husbands. I want to welcome you all. I'm Mills, and I'm going to introduce my co host. His name is
Yeah, my
Spill, and I'm going to let him say
that's
a couple words.
that's right. This is Spill the Scribe. Uh, I'm a father of one and the owner of two messed up knees. We also have on the podcast our special host, Mr. Fonzarelli. Go ahead and say something for the people, Fonzarelli.
What's up, world? It's Fonzarelli, the one and only one. I date people and I'm a poet, so I think I could be a part of this conversation today.
Wow.
Thanks, Fonzo. Thanks, Fonzo. Today on the podcast, we've got a very special guest. You can hear him in the background right now. He's world known. He's famous all over the internet. He's infamous in some people's hearts. Mr. Michael Watson from Married at First Sight. How's it going, Mike?
What it do? What it do, y'all? How you doing, man?
Pretty good. So today we got a few questions, about just Michael Watson in general. We want to start off with our opening question. How the hell do we know Mike? And how do we get here? I'm going to go first. I'm going to just say, me and Mike, we go way back to the black lawn furniture they used to have on the yard at UDC. We used to sit out there and spin yarns about things that we didn't have money to afford. It was a glorious time back in our days. What about you, Mill? How do you know Mr. Michael here?
I actually met Mike a long time ago. I can believe he was a much younger man. I was a much younger man. We were doing an educational program. I'm not going to say what that educational program is because people are weird on the internet, but it was black guys learning about, some cultural stuff. And it was really interesting because at that time, come to find out he was related to one of my close friends who was also in that educational program. So it was just kind of like, it just kind of meshed, and ever since then, I've known this man. So I think that was what 2000 and what 6, 7, something like that.
Definitely, yep.
Now it's 2020. So
Jesus.
of course, when I see that this man was on television on a program that unfortunately I have to watch with my lady because
Fortunately,
she
Mills.
enjoys this
Fortunately.
types. You know what? Fortunately, because this is how we got
Fortunately.
here.
That's right.
And yeah, that's how I know Mike. So I knew Mike before Mike is the Mike that everybody else knows, and now I know this new nigga Mike. Can we say that? Is that allowed? I'm with the shits. So yeah, it's I can't wait to get into this because I want to go, real deep into, how we exactly got here, like Spill said. One, how did you get here? And then how did we get here as a collective? So, thank you, Mike, for doing this and providing us with this opportunity.
Uh,
I guess I'll go. This is Quasi. Yeah, it's just like Mills. I know Mike through that similar program that we went through together, the learning program, and you know what? I did not get forced into this life of math, right? And being a mather. In fact, I didn't even know what channel Lifetime was on. The Lifetime channel was on. And so when these wholesome house husbands put into the group chat, yo, Mike's gonna be on this show, I denied it. I was like, no way. No way Mike's on the show. And then some way, somehow, I tuned in and I got hooked because Mike be on the show is the best thing ever. For the past 6 weeks, the show been on, so it's been highly entertaining, and I'm now a believer. So thank you, Mike, for that. I appreciate that, and I can't wait, just like everybody else, to get into this. It's for you to have your own little story. Kick it to Fonzo.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have that league of young extraordinary gentlemen we all kind of came from. But I actually think we came in around the same class as Mike. And then I was a downtrodden young man one day, and you reached out and helped me get an employment opportunity, I believe, as well. A little bit the years later, and so we've been able to work together a few times. You've shared with me some of your dating aspirations, so it was quite interesting to see you live maybe your dreams, so to speak, quote unquote. We can put that right, your dreams out there on the big screen. So I'm not going to hold this too much, but we're going to get into a few questions with you, Mike. We had some stuff people kind of thought about, and then us, and we know you a little bit, so we had some tougher questions to kind of ask you to try to figure that out. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna go ahead and pass this to Jamil and Spill. Let them start the questions, and we'll just get right to it if you're good, Mike. Unless you want to, address the public before we start.
Nah, man, let's get into it, man. Let's do it.
All right.
All right, so look, to jump this off, we want to start, with I think it's important, right, to provide context, and any good story, it has to have, some details to provide, the reader, the listener, whatever, the viewer, whatever you are, you know, on how you got to this point, and for you exactly how you got to the process of being on this television show. So to start, first question is what was the application process like, Mike?
Honestly, man, there was no application process. So this season, especially from what I understand, and just speaking personally for myself, I got a random phone call. It was a call from California I didn't recognize, so I didn't pick it up. I left a voicemail. Was one of their production assistants was like, "Hey, we want you to be on this show. It's a docu-series, and we're detailing it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." So initially, when I heard the voicemail, I'm thinking it's something related to me doing my TED Talk, which I did a couple of years ago, and I was like, "Cool, this is a follow-up. Maybe I can kind of build off of that." And come to find out, it was a complete opposite of what I thought it was when I came into it. And to be straight up with you, honestly, wasn't interested. Doesn't really fit my vibe. Not really my thing. But as I kind of talked to the producer and she kind of convinced me, and we kind of fleshed it out, I was like, well, maybe it's something I could do. So the application process for me didn't happen until much later.
What questions do you think they should ask that they do not ask that you feel like would make the process a little bit better?
I think they really need to flesh out just what people really are looking for. Honestly, I think most people really don't know if you ask them directly straight up what they're looking for in a relationship, and even in marriage. I think those answers vary and are very different. So I think as far as having a more thorough application process, really kind of break that down and have those intentional conversations with people, and really get into the nitty gritty. Because I feel like a lot of the stuff that I heard, not only from other people on the show, but even doing the application process when we went through to do callbacks, is very surface level, very general. It doesn't really talk to the matter or get to the heart of the matter of what it takes to be in a marriage.
Okay. On that same vein, I don't believe they've ever had anybody with kids on the show. Do you think they purposely screen that out?
Oh, they definitely do. They purposely screen out people with kids because they don't want to bring somebody into the situation that doesn't work out. Now you expose your kids on a national television in a way that may be damaging, which I agree with. I think keeping that aspect and keeping those separate, unless you're doing a season just totally focused on people with children, I think is better. But doing it where somebody's single and then somebody has a child, probably not the best strategy.
So the next question we have is, can you give us a little bit more insight into what the personality test and the screening process overall was like? Because I imagine if you're going to try to pair two people together, right, they're going to naturally need to create a baseline of understanding for those people so they can understand, one, what you guys are looking for, and then two, even for themselves, for whatever fuckery that they might want to have happen. They need to understand the people that they want to bring on the show so that they can have happen what they want to have happen. So, give us and the people listening and watching a little bit of information about what that was like for you.
So honestly, man, in retrospect, thinking about it now, I think whatever we told them that we wanted, we got the opposite. I was very adamant in my application process doing the kind of sit down portion with the experts that I wanted somebody around my age or older, just because I felt like, within that realm, somebody would have some more experience. They've dated around a lot more. They, kind of live life. So I was very adamant about
Hold,
having somebody a little bit
hold
older.
right there.
Go
So
ahead.
when you say you sat down with the experts, can you dig a little bit deeper? What was that about? What happened there?
So definitely, this conversation I had exclusively with Pastor Kyle, he was kind of, what are you looking for? Like, what's your dating history, background? And I was like, oh, I tend to date people my age or older, so in their 30s. Because in my experience, in the dating that I've done in DC and just in general, people in their 30s have had more experience. They've dated a few times, they've been in a few relationships, they either graduated from college or grad school, they're working professionals. So there's something within that. There's a like-mindedness and a frame of reference and kind of history they can refer to as far as like relationships and dating and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like that's important when you're thinking about marriage long term, because you have some similarities and you have shared experiences. So that is super important when you're talking about not only the dating process but marriage, because you have things that are in common and you can kind of see the person's perspective if they have similar experiences as you.
So you want somebody that knows Family Matters, not That's So Raven as the show.
Wow.
So,
Realist.
Right.
I mean, if you can't tell me that the person who did the theme song for Family Matters, Step by Step, and Full House was the same dude, then we probably not gonna work out anyway. Just keeping it 100.
So what type of, all right, so there were two layers, right, to this apparently. So give us a little bit of what were the questions like that you had to answer rather on, the questionnaire where they tried to gather information about you, right? And then the questions that they asked you when you met with Pastor Cal, who is one of the experts on the show. Were they similar or were they vastly different in what they were trying to get out of you in those two different instances of questions?
So yeah, no problem. So definitely the exam was vastly different. The exam was kind of like 100. I'm sorry. Let me take a step back. At 300, 300 answer questionnaire, pretty much ABC answers, and you're looking at anything from the basis of like, your background from a psychology standpoint of like, have you ever done this, or have you ever have you ever committed a crime, to something more general to like, well, if you were in the situation, how you would respond. So like they were really looking at your mental makeup and like how that would work, just generally, not necessarily in the context of a marriage, but like who you were as holistically as a person. The conversations with the experts were very different. They're talking about the meat and potatoes of a marriage. Perfect example. When I came in and had that meeting with Pastor Kyle, I was like, "Hey man, like I'm in education. I'm looking to transition. I'm interviewing for a principal position." And like I make this much money. So I was very transparent and open that I didn't like make, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he was like, well, would it bother you to be with a woman who made more money than you? I'm like, no, as long as she's passionate about her career, then that's all I care about. So, that in comparison to like sitting down with a psychologist and then answering those 300 questions were very different in nature. And I felt like in both situations, I performed well. And, I came across and there was a connection that I had with not only the experts, but like, with the psychiatrist and like how she felt like I was, and there was some understanding there. So I felt really good coming out of that process and felt that it would be a good situation because of how that exchange went with the experts and with the people behind the scenes.
Got you. I'm gonna let Fonzo kick off the next question.
I've been sitting here talking to you. Mike was like, "Oh, that was cool," the whole time trying to chime in on the last conversations. But anyway, so what I was going to ask you is, did you have to sign a prenup?
No, there was no prenup that had to be signed.
Was there like an option for it or anything like that? No conversations about it?
No conversations
Okay.
about prenups.
Cool. So like when you were saying that you were talking to Pastor Cal, how much were they there with you along the way? Was he there for most of the conversations? Were they available after like episodes? Or
So, I mean, like in the beginning process, when you're doing a lot of the pre-work before you get selected and chosen to be matched, you're having a lot of conversations with them. Just kind of them filling you out, them filling you out. You went through a rotation of the experts at least once for the initial time when you got callbacks and you had more direct conversations with them. So, at the very beginning, before you even get a match, you're having multiple conversations with the experts. I would say as the process played out and you are matched and you start to go through the actual experiment, they kind of disappeared a little bit. There's a
Mm.
lot of figuring it out. They had like certain parts where they would come in and they would talk to you, but like it wasn't really as deep or as connected as it was at the beginning. It felt very,
So
very separate.
so were you able to have like you had like a production manager with you on site most of the time?
Yeah, I had a
Um, so,
production manager. Yep.
so were they? Can you talk to me about that relationship? Were they pretty much with you on site most of the time, or was this like really just something in the beginning that they were able to have conversations with you? No.
Yeah, I mean, our production manager was with us the entire time, and that relationship was cool. I mean, so in my case, the production manager I had, Montre, he was with Mika from the beginning of the process. So
Hmm.
pretty much as you're kind of doing the pre-process and meeting with the experts, that's who he was with the entire time. I had a completely different person. I was actually my production manager was the person who was with. Um, so yeah, so my production team was with us the entire time. So Montre, who's everybody now know his name, he was originally he was Mika's production manager from the beginning of the process. I actually had a different producer up until I got matched with her, and so that relationship shifted from me and this person to now me and Montre. So I didn't really meet Montre until after the fact I got matched with her. Um, and that relationship was okay. I think there was always something to be said about, people kind of not necessarily picking favorites per se, but like having more of an established relationship with one person compared to the other person. So where I felt like he did his best to try to stay in the middle, you can tell that at some times it was kind of very biased and like where he was leaning.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like there were at least certain times in your conversations that I guess when you're saying that now, I mean, I'm not going to fill it in for you, but I can see like at least there were times where I would almost have expected the production manager to stop the conversation and kind of, it seemed like you guys were really arguing about, marital kind of problems to me, and I would have expected some of that to stop. But I mean, I guess when it's on television, that's more what you would want to see, right? Like, so you kind of had to sit there and still argue through those kind of conversations, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, were you able to like talk to like anyone that was in your past or in the past of the show that were couples? Were you able to kind of get conversations from any people previously before they got in there or through their process or any of that?
Definitely not. Everything was pretty much directly through the experts. And honestly, something that I said to them in post productions, I was like, yeah, I feel like that would have helped, especially early on and when we were having some of the difficult problems, to kind of talk about people who've been there and done that. Because I think all of us, but especially when I think about the black couples, there's a different level of care and just different things you're thinking about coming from our community that you're not necessarily worried about from the other one. And so this how you come off and certain things and certain conversations and all of that, I think would have been helpful, especially having people who've been through it who have been successful to kind of like, hey, I'm having this problem. How did you handle the situation?
Mm.
Because the experts were not always readily available. So having somebody who's been there, done that, and having that firsthand knowledge and experience, I think would have been helpful at times for difficult moments in the marriage.
All right, Mike. So, my fiance and I, we often just drive around town and like to wonder, how did they decide to live here? Do you ever wonder that about like how did they pick the neighborhood that they seem to live in? I can't tell exactly what neighborhood it was. I had my assumptions, but
Yeah.
I'll let you take that cat out that bag.
Oh no, that's totally fine. So we lived right across the street from Pentagon City,
Oh, nice.
and I mean, which is awesome. I mean, I love Pentagon City, and it wasn't super far out of the way from me from where I actually lived and going to work. So it was cool. I mean, I think it's kind of like they try to pick it based off of what was the middle point between everybody's living locations. I was in DC, Brandon was in DC, Zach was in DC, and other people were in Maryland and some other people were in Virginia. So they tried to find whatever that middle base was. And so it happened to be Arlington, Virginia. And the apartment was nice and it was cool and it wasn't super inconvenient. And I think that's kind of how they determined where we were going to live. What was the middle point between all the different locations?
Okay. So how often did they start filming? So, they've got you trapped in this house and you just, they basically sequester your life. So how much did you actually film? And was it crazy? Did they have you catching that golden hour to make sure you got that right sunlight on your face or anything?
I mean, we filmed pretty much nonstop. We did have days off, so I don't want to make it seem like they were not observing labor laws. If I remember, the filming schedule was Monday, then you had Tuesday, Wednesday off, then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you had a break right in the middle, and then you accounted for holidays. But pretty much there was no weekend we ever had off. So all weekends we always filmed, and then what's different from this show compared to the other shows, you still work while you're filming. So, you do your regular 9 to 5 and then you come home to do 4 or 5 hours of filming on top of that. So say you work from 9 to 5. In my case, it was 9 to 6, 6:30. I would come home, call time was at 7, and then filming would be from 7 to 10 or 7 to 11. And then you would do the same thing again, and that would be the continuation. And then your weekends, your Saturdays and your Sundays, filming all day. From whatever call time was to whenever they decided to let you go.
Damn, that's a full.
So you pretty much had to not even. That shit basically took over your life. It sounds like you had to work around the schedule for the show, and not the opposite. Or they weren't trying to work around your schedule. You had to fucking find a way to fucking fit all of that shit in.
Pretty much, and then there are certain dates you had to block off. So when we went to Panama for the honeymoon, or when you had the reunion show, or when you had commitment day, there were certain dates you had to block off in your schedule to accommodate their filming schedule. So it pretty much became your life.
That sounds like a lot. And I think one of the key things to this is what exactly was it like for you to have that level of I don't even want to say scrutiny, but just that level of involvement in your life. You couldn't just say no. So what was that like? You know what I'm saying? When you went to work, was that your only time to just be away from it?
I mean, honestly, yeah, man. There was a few and far between I had breaks, honestly. And, I don't mind cameras in my face. I'm not uncomfortable in front of the camera just because of my background and things that I've done. But I think it became overwhelming at some points because it's a lot, especially imagine my situation where I'm trying to sell into my job and really be good at it and do a good job. And like for anybody who's have a job, your schedule can fluctuate during the day. So you can say, these are my set hours from this time to this time. But if a student doesn't get picked up or something happens and I got to stay later, I'm still working that job, and then I have to turn around, get in the car, and rush to whatever location we're about to film at. And, I think at one part of the season, you kind of saw me kind of reach that tipping point where, I literally was in my role in my school. I was doing my thing. I had a parent that came late to pick their kid up. I had to stay with them. And then I had to rush to make a call time, around, I think it was 7:30. And I was exhausted, you know what I'm saying? I worked a full day and then I got to come and do this. And, where we were in that particular point in time in our relationship wasn't great. And the frustration of just kind of doing all of that in a day kind of boiled up. And, the exchange was what it was. So, yeah, it became pretty overwhelming at times for sure.
So before we leave these background questions, I think that what the answer you just gave leads into my probably final question, but will allow you to expound a little bit So why didn't you? We here know why you didn't leave, but I think this will help provide background information for other people. Why exactly was it that you just couldn't just say, you know what, this is exhausting, it's bleeding too much into my regular life, I can't do this, I'm done. What was it?
If you left at any point during the show, they would sue you. That's the best way to
Nice.
say
Word? How much, bro?
it. I mean, the ranges went from 50,000 to $1 million, and ironically enough, that's where I'm at now. So the show and I are currently in a legal battle because of what happened on the show.
So you're in a legal battle, but didn't your boy fail on purpose? So you saying your boy just failed on purpose so he didn't get sued?
I mean, yeah, bro. Look, and again, I'm not in the business.
We're not
going to
ask about obviously other people.
No. You straight.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I'm not in the business of trying to figure out why they chose to do what they did in comparison to somebody else. I mean, I know for me, I'm not the only person that's in the same situation. Ironically enough, the other person of color, Brandon, is in the same situation as I am. Ironic how that happens. But yeah, man, I think for us, to your point, there was a point where we kind of got wind and became very disillusioned of what was happening in our individual situations. And we came and we, reasonably tried to have a conversation with them. I'm like, yo, this is not working for us. And neither one of us are happy. Nobody really wants to stay in the situation. And they kind of threw the contract at us. And that became pretty much, it transitioned really early between the marriage itself and trying to work on that, and became more of a battle between us and production, because they wanted to do what they wanted to do, which came at the expense of us being able to function and have our regular life, and that caused more problems. So it was a trickle-down effect immediately.
Ladies and gentlemen, we here at Wholesome House Husbands, we do our research, and fortunate for us, there are several channels and avenues of Reddit and backwater forums out there that you can go into that people dig deep, man, on Instagram and everything. And there's language out there that states if these individuals like Mike leave this show for any reason whatsoever, much like he stated, 50 bands at the least is what they're gonna take out of your ass. So, I just think everybody, when you guys are listening to this and you are watching them shows and you just wondering, why don't these people leave? There you go. That's why they don't leave, because they will get sued.
No.
Nobody wants.
In the
Go
words of
ahead.
Marshawn Lynch, I'm here because I don't want to get fined, bro.
Oh man, yeah, I'm just hit, so I don't get fined. Yeah, man, because look, 50K is nothing to sneeze at, man. That's yeah, that's crazy. So no, I understand, and I think was there anything else about kind of the things that, or the stipulations that they put forth on you before we move on, that you felt kind of were just ridiculous? That could be from anything in the marriage, or stipulations that you had to had with your wife or stuff like that. Is there anything that just made you feel like this is crazy? And now that I see this, I don't know, because okay, so my question is when you get this contract from these people, and it's having all of these stipulations and stuff in it, man, I imagine it's got to be pretty damn thick, man. So a legit novel. So do you just go through all this? You send it to your lawyer. What do you do? How do you decide to jump into this process?
Man, honestly, I sat there and it was 30 pages. It's a 30-page contract, and my legal advisor was like, yo, anything more than 5, you probably shouldn't sign. And so had I known that before I got the contract, I probably would have thought twice. I mean, there was definitely some language that stood out to me that didn't sit well with me. One being, I think the one that we all that stood out to us was like, yo, basically, there's some language in the contract that says if your spouse gets pregnant and or you or your spouse contracts a disease, the show's not liable for you. And
your body, your problem.
Right. In that same in
That's
that same
also
vein, if you were ever to get sick on the show or like to be under the weather, you got to film. And for me, there were two separate occasions where I got crazy sick on the show. I had bronchitis and I had a sty, and so in one of the scenes, there's like several scenes in the season where I don't take off my glasses. And it's not because I think I look cool. It's because I had a big ass sty on my eye, and that was my way of like not having that be shown on camera. Like I just had to wear the glasses because I still had to do my job. Like it was honestly, it was just a job. It became very much I come to work, I do my job, I go home. Like it became very much a rudimentary process, and really the marriage part of that kind of got eliminated pretty early on in the experiment.
So just coming back to that part, can you tell me around what episode for the viewers did you feel like you started to, because it seems like it was all like hodgepodge. Like I feel like it was back and forth, right? Like I don't really know what your timeline was, because I know like later on in the shows when we first started to see like your honeymoon, we started to see some weird, like, so just in that whole idea.
Yeah.
Could you just give me the timeline of like, okay, you came out the elevator, you met her, married, bam, got you, and they ship you off. By the time you came back, you were like, it seems like probably that would be like right as soon as you start your real relationship, but I would say you were already checked out at that point, right? Like, but anyway, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Could you just give us a timeline of when you feel like for you, as far as filming the timeline and what we see, when did Michael officially check out of like this program?
No, honestly, I would say I was done before we left Panama.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Why?
Honestly, man. So and I'll put this on myself. I had expectations about what the marriage should be like and things that I felt should have happened, and they didn't necessarily line up with who I was presented with. And when we were having conversations about what that looked like for us long term and just how we thought about the world. And this goes back to that conversation about really kind of diving deep and figuring out where these people are, because we just wasn't compatible in a lot of areas. And so because of that, it was very clear to me that this probably wasn't going to work before Panama. But when we got to Panama and kind of like, I moved out of the suite, and what happened, it was pretty much done before I got back on the plane to come back to DC.
That's still like most of the show is still going on though, right?
There's a whole lot of shows still going
I was gonna
on.
say, what leak is that?
Wait. So wait, Mike, hold up. We gotta back it up a bit. Hold up. Because I feel like we missing a key point. You checked out. You said you had conversations with her.
Yeah, man.
What were those conversations? Like, what was said? Where you basically found out that no, this is not who I really want to be with.
I mean, honestly, for me, I was totally blindsided about the sexual ultimatum conversation. For one, it never happened, right? So, and I said this on the show. I don't remember if it was shown or not. But let me kind of set the stage for you about kind of where we were and what was happening. So, at the wedding where we were on the dais, if you remember, like the pastor was, they're giving you like a little rundown of like who you're marrying and all this kind of stuff. And, she said two very important things that then was kind of reaffirmed about my family. So on the dais, the pastor says, hey, Michael's family wants you to know that he has a very unique sense of humor and you're not always going to get it. So I would consider like more like dry wit, kind of like a Black Frazier or Black AF. And the second thing, this is what was then said to her when she had a separate dinner with my family or meet up with my family. If you embarrass him, like if you do anything that like puts him in an embarrassing situation, he will shut down, right? And those are two things that like happened before we even got on the plane, right? So these are two things she knew. and kind of having that information and not being
Hold on,
able to
Mike.
kind
But
of
hold on. You said before you got on the plane. Can you tell me,
be,
just so people know, because
yeah,
they don't know you, right? Like,
that's
because we
fine.
sitting here watching, right? And they was like,
Right,
"Yo,
right,
Fonzo, check this out." Right?
Right.
So you come off, all suited and booted. You come off the joint, walking around, and you
right.
stand there with her, right? And she was like, "Oh, you look more nervous than me." Your face kind of was like, "Jokes on you, jokes on you, Petit." You know what I mean? And like, I just sat there. I was like, "Damn, bro, he don't look too happy about that." And then like when she just came off on this part, like, so I'm not gonna get into too much of it, bro.
No,
But
fine, bro. You
you
good?
said Black Fraser, bro. Don't nobody know them two words stuck together ever, bro. Not even the people that watch Girlfriends know that like that. But
Yeah, come
anyway,
on, bro. Come on, bro.
so I'm gonna come back to you on this, bro. But like, so just paint this to me, bro. Did you try to say this in like a joking manner and it backfire, bro?
Oh, definitely, bro. So let me just
Yo,
let's just have this conversation, man.
come
Let's
on,
just
bro.
let's just have this conversation. So this is I'm gonna tell you exactly word for word, line for line, what happened. We
Right.
get married. We do the ceremony. We do whatever. We go upstairs. We in the room. We shoot our little scene, and then the camera crew leaves, and then it's our producer and our assistant producer. So when you walk into the bathroom, and this, I think they showed this, not necessarily for us, but they showed this in other couples. Every hotel wedding suite is the same. Every honeymoon suite is the same, or whatever. So you walk into the room, bed, blah 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 blah. In the bathroom, is a bowl of condoms, right? So we're in the
Whoa.
bathroom together.
Hold on.
Yes,
What?
yes.
Hold on.
So
So
Like at the barbershop, you saying like a bowl, like at the barbershop? Is it a fish
like
bowl full
like
of
a
condoms?
like a
like
college
Or is it
Like a
like
dorm.
a
student health
pint
center,
bowl
bro.
full
Nah,
of
it's like
condoms?
walking in a student health center or your guidance
Yeah.
counselor or the nurse's
Right.
office.
Yeah.
Look, they was
so
trying
we're
to tell y'all something.
Bruh.
right.
Did they try to disrespect you with the brands they put in there?
bro. It was all the
Oh,
white
you know
brands
that
that
was
you can't
nothing but
use, fam.
lifestyles and
Nothing but
Durex.
Sensitive.
lifestyles, bro. Right.
Oh, wow.
So we're in the restroom because she asked me to help her take her out her dress, and it's myself, her, and the producer, right? And so we in there, we both noticed the bowl of condoms, and I was like, oh, they definitely like pushing the agenda in sex. She was like, well, that's she says her thing, and I'm like, yeah, that's weird. And I make a joke again because again, I'm trying to cut the tension. It's awkward. There's a bowl of condoms in the bathroom. I'm helping you take out your dress. So like, it's not like the most ideal situation. So I was like, oh, it don't matter. I don't use any of those brands anyway. And I said something to the fact that I was like, oh, and I also, I'm allergic to latex. So like that was a conversation at first. And she was like, well, it don't matter. Something. We're not having sex. And I was like, yeah, we definitely not having sex. And I was like, but I'm definitely getting some on the honeymoon. And I said it like in a
Wow.
kind of joke like that, you know
Wow.
what I'm saying? But like I laughed and our producer laughed. And then like I left the bathroom. Like it was kind of
Bro,
like,
she from
whatever.
Baltimore, Mike. She from
Wait, she was real
Baltimore,
quiet after that.
bro.
Wait,
But what did
yeah.
you? But so hold on. My first question is: when you said I'm allergic to latex, did you say I'm allergic to latex, or did you say I'm allergic to latex?
No, I said it like I said it like a public service now. So I was like, by the way, I'm allergic to latex. Like if we're gonna have this conversation awkwardly about condoms, might as well throw out the facts and figures you need to know. Even if we were gonna do it, we can't do it because none of that shit now I use. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Okay.
got a brand. You know what I'm saying? I got a brand I use, so that ain't gonna work. But like
And
what I'm saying, like
then-
if I'm yeah.
So she never laughed about this. It was never funny. Not even like a haha, you made a terrible joke kind of situation. She didn't try to bring
Right.
you back from the bad joke at all.
Nah, and again, you know what I'm saying? If the joke, and I get it because my sense of humor is kind of like, it was a joke to me. It was nothing ever, anything that I meant by it. Like, like it was supposed to be funny. It didn't land. And that's cool. I can take that. Like, especially since we're like getting to know each other. But like, if that bothers you, let's have that conversation. Let's not have it spiral out of control to be made out to be something that is completely not, especially when I'm just getting to know you. Like it's really, but like if I can be completely transparent with you, you know what I'm saying? Like as adults, I feel like we should be able to have a conversation about intimacy and it not be an uncomfortable thing, especially since we are legally married. I should be able to have that conversation with you as my wife. There's a time and a place for it. I understand that, but like, there's no reason why we can't have a conversation about, sex in general or like how you feel about it or expectations or any of that kind of stuff, because in that sense, like I have a better understanding of where you're coming from, and in the same return, you have an understanding from where I'm coming from too. And I wish that conversation could have took place instead of me making a ill-advised joke, you not taking it well, and then it becoming something more than what it was. And I think that for me, understanding that it came from a really genuine place, and that it became more than what it actually was, really bothered me. And the fact that it was just done in such a way, it was embarrassing. And it put me in a really awkward position. And like from that point on, I was like, look, if you're willing to do this, taking a conversation out of context and making it to be that, then like, God forbid what else you're willing to do. And I can't trust you. Like I can't take that risk being in a situation where I don't feel like the person who I'm married to has my best interest at heart.
So,
I cannot. Sorry.
so Mike, you was watching there, like seeing how they were setting you up, and you're like, oh man, this has to be the worst because this about, this is gonna be on
Bruh.
what everybody sees.
Bruh. I mean, like honestly, I think that's like one of the most watched clips online is that clip in that situation. And it's embarrassing for me because I work in education, fam. Like I take what I do very seriously. I love the job that I have. I love working with students. And the idea that you create a storyline or a narrative or a scene that gets taken out of context and then you allow it to be inferred to be something other than what it is. And it puts me in a really awkward situation because it's a lose-lose proposition. I can't go toe-to-toe for her in that conversation because then I look like the angry black man. But I can't necessarily, say she's wrong because then it looks like I'm lying and that I'm denying something. So I'm guilty on both parts. So there was really no space where I really could advocate for myself in that situation.
So why didn't you say it was a joke, bro? You shut down.
Because I didn't expect it, bro. Like I said, if you look at that scene, I walk into it. I'm thinking we about to have a conversation about me moving out of the suite, and then to come to find out, it's about this. So I'm completely thrown off, and I'm just like, yo, for real? Like literally, before that particular scene was shot, myself and the producer had already decided that I wasn't going to stay in the suite. So I'm thinking I'm about to come in and sit down and be like, look, we had a rough start. Maybe some time apart right now would be great. And I'm going to go ahead and move out of the suite. The producer's already set it up for me to move out of the suite anyway and me to move downstairs. So I'm thinking that's the conversation we're about to have. I did not expect that to be the conversation. So really, honestly, when that happened, I'm thrown off and I'm stuck. And that's why you see me, Jonathan, sitting there trying to gather my thoughts because I don't know what's going on, and that's not what I expected that conversation to be.
So let me ask you this: in hindsight, before we move on, in hindsight, would you have handled that situation differently in any way? Would you have made the joke? Do you think that since the joke didn't land and that it kind of puts you in a precarious situation where now you've got to kind of defend claims against, because Mike, it looks on you already know what it looks like from the outside, like how it's framed on TV, how the show framed it. You know what I'm saying? So if you had it all to do over again, I know on life we don't get no do backs, but the great thing about memory and reflection is that we can just look back and think about shit we would do differently. What would you have done differently in that instant with her?
Oh, definitely. I mean, if I could do it over again, I probably wouldn't have said the joke. Like I said, I mean, I meant no harm or disrespect when I said it, and in general, to her at all. I just that's not what my my approach was, and I apologized to her then. I'll apologize now because that wasn't the intent. It was to have a conversation. It was me making light of the fact that you basically are propping up sex in front of our faces and we don't know each other, and it's an awkward exchange. And I was trying to make the situation as lighthearted as possible. And the joke did land, and that's okay. I have no problem with it not landing. I do have a problem with you taking it being, that makes sense. I say you taking it being constructed and being used in a different way that wasn't the case. That I do have a problem with. But as far as the joke itself and the fact that it didn't connect and it didn't land, I do apologize for that because I don't want any person to feel uncomfortable with me in that situation. That's not my intention.